Cool. Looks like our join rate has peaked out here a little bit, so we can get started. Thank you for filling out that poll. It looks like we have a mix of you, and I appreciate you taking the time to join. I know this is just a strange time, and I'm sure you guys have been working, if not from your home or different locations. Things are just kind of all impacted in some different ways. So appreciate you taking the time to join us today for this webinar. And we're specifically going to look at tools to hopefully support you guys as you transition, if you have to a virtual classroom. And so we'll get into some concrete techniques. So to start, to introduce myself, my name is Ryan. I am a customer success manager. I'm based out of Pennsylvania, so I work with a lot of the Pennsylvania schools, but then also have a handful of Texas and kind of throughout the Mountain West. When I was a teacher for 7 years, teaching high school physics before joining CodeHS. And with me, who will be sharing as well, is Lucas. I'll let him introduce.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, hi everyone. Some familiar names, which is always great to see. Yeah, I am a CSM here at CodeHS, based on the West Coast. So I am quarantined to my lovely San Francisco apartment. And yeah, excited to kind of talk about how we can be using CodeHS virtually, which is potentially something different than many of you have been doing throughout this year. So assuming we've all washed our hands, let's get started.
All right, sounds good. So as I mentioned, today's goal is really to go through some techniques and ideas on how you can successfully manage your CodeHS classes virtually. Everyone has access to the Pro Tools, so you may be totally new to CodeHS or just new to some of the Pro Tools, or you may be a veteran. So we're going to be touching on some of these Pro Tools specifically to support the virtual classrooms. There's a lot on the site. So if you are new, we have a knowledge base with hundreds of articles. So I would recommend spending some time there. We have some webinars from the fall that can help just support your general usage of CodeHS, but we also have articles, diving specifically into all these tools. So definitely check that out. Specifically today, we are going to go over a handful of things. We're going to talk about how you manage the class roster, especially when students may be signing in from home or from a new location. How you customize the curriculum that you assign, what sort of resources students will have in supporting their programming and debugging so that they can be somewhat self-sufficient. How you can communicate with students through the CodeHS interface, what that looks like, and then how to grade student work and manage progress, and show you where we have a lot of additional teaching resources in terms of lesson plans, handouts, and solutions, and how you can access all of that. Specifically, we created a home base for all of these tools centered around virtual teaching. So this is housed in our knowledge base. So if you go to codehs.com/virtual, write it down, bookmark it. If you haven't been yet, I'll just show you it really quick here. Maybe. Oops. No, I won't. I don't know where that tab went. Sorry. But it has everything we're going to cover today. It has in depth with links to articles and a little more details, screenshots. Right at the top of the article has where you can turn on your Pro access for your sections. So if you have free sections or if you haven't created sections, if you go to this link right at the top, there's a button that you can click that will give you that Pro access for your account. So I would say do that first if you haven't done that already. This will also be the page where we'll post the recording of the webinar when we're finished. We're going to cover a lot. It'll be about an hour. We hope that this webinar can be a guide for you that you can refer back to, as you're actually doing this for your classes. So definitely check it out again, you know, fast forward to the sections that you need to see again. And we hope that you do that. If you have to leave early, you know, same thing. It'll be there for your watching at your leisure. Then we also curated a handful of other tools, non-HS tools that we think could be helpful for leading classes virtually. There are a lot of ways to conduct classes asynchronously. So whether it's a live conference like this, where you have a video chat room and you can talk and share resources live, or we linked some ideas for like a screen recording. So if you wanted to record a video of either you programming or you talking through something, we identified some resources there as well. Or you have a chat, you know, and maybe it's a chat back and forth with students, more like a forum. So Lucas will touch upon that specifically again when we look at our resources, but I just want to point out that we did put some external resources in there as well for you. Hopefully that will be helpful. So yeah, I'm going to share my teacher screen. I'm going to log into the teacher account to show you some of these tools. So let's start here. Sure. All right, so we have a mix of people. Some have never used CodeHS before, and some have been pro users. So we have a range. In case you didn't hear this morning, or we started, there is a question and answer portal in this video chat. So please use that as the best option to post your questions, because then we get a running list of questions, and anything we don't touch on live, we can be sure to follow up with an email and make sure it gets answered. So for those who are new to CodeHS, this is your landing page as a teacher. You create these sections that are groups of students. So these are your classes. And these sections are then aligned with a course. So specifically for this webinar, I created this Heart Period 1 section, and I aligned it to this JavaScript course. So if I click on this section, it'll show us the roster page. So specifically, you know, managing the virtual class, students will probably be signing on computers that they haven't signed on before, or it's not part of a school network, so you might not have the links. So as a reminder, every section has a unique code to enroll students into your section. So if you're trying to add students, you can use this link and it'll prompt them to create an account. And then once they do, it'll stick them into your section. If they already have an account, it'll automatically just enroll them into your class. So specifically, I want to talk about these two pages from the roster page. So manage student accounts here. This is a page that will list the class roster, and it will list all the emails that they use to sign up for the site. So that can be helpful just in helping debug login problems. We also have you as a teacher have the ability to update their password. So let's say Emma messages you and says, I can't log in, I don't remember my password. You could change Emma's password, update it, so that hopefully will mitigate some of the student login troubles that will bound to happen at some point. So this is just a great way to manage that. Likewise, the attendance page. This is a relatively new page that we have. Again, a simple way to manage your maybe expectations that they sign on, on a given day. So for March 17th, this is my class. They all have red X's, so they have not signed on to the platform today. But if they did sign on, so if Emma signed on, she would see a green check mark. She'd see a timestamp for when she first signed on, and then her most recent activity. So this could be just, again, a simple way. If your expectation is, hey, this Tuesday or tomorrow, I want everyone to sign on, you can at least see when they're starting to sign on and what they've been, what their most recent activity has been. And we'll talk about some of our other tools to manage like content progress and that sort of stuff. So hopefully this helps just with getting the class set up. We do have other webinars on how you create a section and how that section is aligned with content. So if you're curious, you can ask us that question, and we'll send you a knowledge base link to direct you to that resource. But at this point, we're going to say we have the section that we want. We have the students in here that we hope. So now let's talk about customizing the course content. So I'm going to click the assignment page from up here. And with the Pro access, there's a lot you can do to customize content. So I actually renamed this course for today. You might see a different course as you're doing this. So renaming might help you just organize your courses. So this is based on the default JavaScript course. So these are all the JavaScript modules, and every module has lessons, and every lesson then has activities. The awesome thing about this platform is you can absolutely totally customize anything. So to start, I want to, let's say, add an assignment. I want to add some extra Carol practice problems. So I'm going to click Add Assignment. And on the bottom, we have a few sources for content. So supplemental is what CodeHS has already built out. You can also add content from other courses, which I'll do after. And then you can also create your own content. And this is super quick and easy to do. And honestly, I think one of the best ways to really bring it virtually so that you can insert quizzes or free response questions or a custom exercise that you want students to do. And you can put that in the direct flow of the course. So to start, let's just add, I'm going to add these extra Carol puzzles. So I'm going to click Assign. And once this loads, you'll see now down at the bottom, I have this module, Extra Carol Puzzles, with all of these challenge problems in there. The nice thing with Pro is that I can now move this to the top. So on the top of this assignments page, there's an edit button. If I click that, and I can actually now grab this module and drag it all the way to the top so that when students are viewing the content, they'll see it in this order. And I'm going to stick it right before the Carol Challenges module and click Done. So that's an easy way to add supplemental. The other thing I want to do is I want to add a module from our cybersecurity course. There's a good module about digital citizenship, which is relevant now to moving our class online. So if I go back to the add content, I'm now going to click on the course catalog down here at the bottom. And I'm just going to open this in a new tab so I can leave my assignments open. Okay, so the course catalog has all of our CodeHS default courses. You can search and use any of them. I'm going to pull out cybersecurity. And I'm going to look at the units because I don't want to assign the whole course. I just want to assign this digital citizenship module. So I'm going to click Assign. And now you have to choose which course you want to assign it to. So this was the course that I created that is aligned with that virtual section that I created. And these are some of my other courses that I just had. So I'm going to click to this course. And it shows assigned, so now I can close this tab and refresh my assignments page. And you'll see now down here at the bottom, here's this digital citizenship module. Again, I want to bring this up to the top, so I'm going to click Edit and then drag this module all the way up to the top. And in fact, I would want my students to start with this module. So I'm going to bring it up here. So now when students log in and they look at this content, they're going to see it in this order, as it's presented. The last place that you can easily add content would be your own custom content. And so, well, I should say the last. We also have problem banks and playlist banks. So when I go through and create my own content, it's going to add it to the problem bank and playlist bank. So these are banks that where it houses all of the teacher created resources. So any problems that you guys create as teachers will be added to the problem bank. So you can easily pull, why don't I just show this right now, because it's great. So here's a problem bank, and this has problems created from teachers. So you can see these teachers here. You can filter by the activity type, the language, the kind of drilling down console or graphics. And then if there was a particular problem that you liked, let's say this problem from Amos from Cody High School, if I clicked on this, I can see the description that he put in, the starter code for the exercise, the different worlds that Carol will have to solve, and I can assign it just like I did those other content pieces right to my course. So this is a great way. You don't have to start from scratch. We have a lot of problems created from teachers, and you can see how many teachers have actually used this problem in their courses, which is kind of cool. So I encourage you guys to explore this. We're going to create our own content, which will then add to this bank so others can use it as well. Okay, so this is, again, I'm on my assignments page. This is the course. So at the bottom here, I'm going to open up my playlists in a new tab. And this is the same thing as the create dashboard. It's going to allow us to create content. So playlists are a module that will just house your activities that you create, and then you can move it from the playlist wherever you want. So let's just, we'll create one called virtual questions. And so there are some settings here. You could customize, the image associated, add a description, and this is for the playlist, but I just want to create an activity. So for this activity, I want to create a free response problem. I want students to answer just a couple free response questions as a reflection after one of the hard Carol challenges. So I'm going to call this Super Cleanup, which was one of the Carol exercises, and free response questions. So after I type that in, and if I just press enter, it's going to create the activity, and then you get to choose what type of activity you want. So pretty much everything we use as a company to develop content, you have available to create your own. So it could be a Carol exercise, a Python exercise. You could create a quiz, a multiple choice quiz, if you want to do some sort of formative or summative assessment. You could add a video if you have external video or resources like a Google Doc you want to share. You can do all that through this as well. We're going to create a free response question, which will be very simple. So I click create. So the description will be where the questions go. So one might be, what was particularly challenging about the cleanup exercise? And two might be, what are you better at after completing the exercise? Pretty basic questions here. And you could also provide a description saying answer the following two questions, using complete sentences, etc. So I'm going to save that description. And now I want to assign it to my course. So I can go all the way over here to assign. And here's that virtual course that we're just working with. So I want to assign it there. And I can click go to this course. And you'll see down at the bottom, here is the Super Cleanup free response questions. Now I want to actually move this to occur right after the Super Cleanup exercise. So I can click these three dots. So I've drilled down, you have the module, and then this lesson, and then the actual activity. So if I click on the three dots for the activity, in this pro section, I can say move to lesson. and then choose which lesson I want to put it in. And I know I want to put it in my Carroll Challenge problems lesson. So I will do that and click move. And it's no longer here. So this is now just an empty module. So I'm going to delete it. So I'm going to click delete one more time. And yes, delete this module. So it's not going to appear anymore. So it's just kind of a shell for the initial creation. And so now if I go into my Carroll challenges, we'll see down here at the bottom is the free response question I just created. I can preview what this looks like. So here's what the students would see. You know, there's the question, and Lucas will get into the editor a little bit later, but then they could, you know, answer their questions, etc. But I do want to move this right after there's the super clean challenge problem. So if I click these three dots again, I can now move up within the lesson. Oh, looks like I already had one in there. So I'm going to delete that other one. Delete that assignment. So there we go. So now I have super cleanup. Those are the questions. As a teacher, I think this is such an easy way to really tailor the course to what you want it to be, especially virtually, because you don't have that whiteboard space where it's a lot harder to do like warm-up questions or exit tickets. So you could create questions, and you could even have like a warm-up questions module and just have a list of free response questions. So they know, and you could date them, so they know, you know, on March 17th, when they log in, go to warm-up questions, and they'll see a free response or a quiz or an activity or whatever you want to create as like a warm-up. So it's very easy to really customize and make it your own. All right, I'm gonna pause there before I talk about the access controls and the due dates, how you actually control the what content students can access and how you communicate the pacing. So I'll get to that in a moment, but I want to see if there's any questions that have come up around either the rostering or assignment customization.
I think you were pretty darn thorough there, Ryan. There's no questions currently, but let's wait a second or two and see if we get any questions.
Cool. Sounds good. While we're waiting, I'll just pull up, I got this link now. I'll just pull up, here's that virtual guide if you haven't actually been there. This is the button you'd press to activate CodeHS Pro. And we have a lot, this is just the what's in this guide. So you can see the outline is pretty extensive. So give it a read when you have a moment. But there's a lot here that hopefully can support you guys.
Cool, let's check out course settings.
All right, so while we're on the assignments page, you can drill down to the individual assignments. And if you click the three dots, you can change some of the settings straight from here. So if you know, for example, you want this particular exercise, you know, due at a certain time, you can click that and change the due dates right from this screen. And you can do that with your, whether it's actually assigned or locked down or not. I'm going to show you how to do that like on a bigger scale. Up here in the course settings, these are the major settings for your course that you definitely want to explore. I'm going to start with access controls. It is what it sounds. This is how you can control what content student can access. So right now, if they logged in and as part of your class, they could see everything that's available. I started locking some of these later modules because I don't want them to see it. And Lucas will show you from a student perspective what that looks like. You can also schedule. So if you know at a particular time you want content to be released, I could schedule this entire module to be released, you know, at the end of the month. And I could also then lock it down after a period of time. So this is a good way, like for example, on the final exam or any of the assessments, if you only want it to appear for an hour, you could set a time, tomorrow at, let's say 9 a.m., it's going to open and then it will close tomorrow at, 11 a.m. or something like that. So it's a way to control that student access. It's up to you on how you want to manage that. Many teachers will lock down maybe some of the future things just so students can't click ahead and everything, but it's up to you if you want it a little more self-paced or you want to control and have the class all together at the same point. And if you have multiple sections, you can choose, which sections whether you do this for all sections or your individual groups of students.
And Ryan, will you just click into a module to show that that can be
done
at the lesson or activity level as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Lou. So same structure. So these are all the modules, and then you have lessons, and then you have the activities. So you don't have to schedule or lock things down on the module level. If I wanted to, just lock this short stack assignment, I could just lock that one assignment. If I wanted to lock this whole lesson, I could do that while all the other lessons are available. So it's as granular as you would like to control that content. Thank you. Cool. So the next setting, access is really controlling the flow. Due dates is how you would communicate timing. So again, whether it's on the module level, lesson level, or activity level, you can pick a date to be the official due date for that lesson or activity or module. This will be communicated to students. Students have a due dates dashboard where they can see all due dates. And then on individual activities, it will show as well. And Lucas will demonstrate that. But it's, a way to convey that information to them through our platform. It will also flag student assignments that are submitted after a due date. So if we said we want this lesson due by the end of the week, students can still submit the Make a Tower exercise, but it'll have a little flag on it saying it's late if they submit it, next week, let's say the 23rd. And then you can decide how you want to grade it, if you want to take off points or whatever. That's up to you. So it's really just a way to communicate both to you as a teacher when things come in and to the students when you expect them to come in. So yeah, I think I will pause there. Any questions regarding those?
We'll give it a second for questions. And then Ryan, if you can let me share my screen, I will take over and we'll look at some of the different resources as far as the day-to-day, actually grading work, and so on. So here what we see is the student homepage. So we previously saw what the teacher homepage looks like, where it has the sections. This is the student homepage. So we see on the left-hand side, students can view assignments. They can go directly to their notes. So that would be any notes that they've taken during the video. They have a due dates dashboard, as Ryan touched on, as well as badges, practice, and some other things that we will get into. So we will see at a later date what it looks like for a teacher to leave a comment, but when a comment is left, that will be left right here so that students can click into this and actually go directly to that comment and start work there. But let's go ahead and view our assignments dashboard. This is very similar to the teacher assignment dashboard. We can see the modules, each lesson, and within each lesson, we can see each activity. We can see down here that my teacher as well has locked some material. This is what a student sees if material has been locked. And then when they open that assignment, it's going to look like this. It says this assignment is locked. Talk to your teacher for access. Doesn't give them when it's going to be unlocked, doesn't give them what it is behind that lock screen, anything like that. So here we see kind of the work that this student is currently working on. We're in while loops. We're in while loops in Carol. On the right-hand side here, I can see the due date. It looks like all of this is due on Friday. The video and the example have been completed appropriately. Looks like exercise number 1, lay a row of tennis balls, has been reviewed, but there's maybe a comment or something that I need to continue to work on. But me as a student, I'm currently working on follow the yellow brick road or yellow ball road. One of the first things that a student has at their kind of access is the exercise description, right? So being able to know what is expected of them. We can see 3 different worlds here, a starting world and an ending world. So it looks like what we need Carol to do is end up at the end of the row of balls. So this is something that is accessible to students at all times. They can click show exercise here on the left and access this information again. This is the student editor page, the teacher editor page. They both look very similar. We can see that the student has written some code, left some comments. Another thing that students are going to have accessible to them is the test cases. So this is checking what students need to do to pass this exercise. Looks like my indentation is off. So if we go ahead and change my indentation and click check code again, we can see that my indentation has been corrected. I'm not currently passing world 2 and world 3. Let's go ahead and run my code. Looks like I have, what is that, 5 straight move statements, 6 straight move statements. It certainly passes world 1, but if I go to world 2 and run that code, it looks like I should be right here at the end of the balls, but I'm way over here because my 6 move statements don't have anything to do with the tennis balls. They're placed there. So maybe I need to go to the docs tab and try to understand what else I have accessible to me. I can look at how to write a function. Maybe I need a different function to be able to answer this multi-world problem. I have if statements. Okay, it shows me how to write if statements. It shows me the different things that Carol already knows without me adding additional knowledge, things like that. So that docs tab is something that is going to be available to students as well. And under more, there's a few other things as well. So maybe I could go view the slides. Remember what is being taught to me in this lesson and probably what is being expected of me. So we can see this is while loops in Carol. Pretty good example. This student doesn't have any while loops, so they probably won't be able to solve this equation. And the student can click through, see kind of a code. Oh, here's how to write a while loop. Okay, that's helpful. Input the condition and then the code to execute during that. Things like that. They can add notes to this video. So all things accessible to the students. And I say this as a last resort, but the last resort that you should tell your students they have access to is this conversation tab. That's more, and then conversation. And this is conversation with you. So you will be able to answer these student questions. This is where they will go to see what you respond as well. I can say, what is world 2? Why doesn't my 6 move statements work? And I can send, and then let's take a minute and see what that looks like from a teacher perspective. Okay, so we are on the review tab as a teacher now. So Ryan touched on roster, assignments, and course settings. We are now on the review tab. We can see here that we have help questions. There's a few different help questions from, it looks like the same student. This is hard. I don't get it. Probably not worth responding to. But what is world 2? Why doesn't my 6 move statements work? Let's go ahead and respond to that student. So I'm going to click into the student's work. Takes me back to the student's editor, but now I'm viewing this as a teacher. You can see that I'm a teacher because I have the ability to grade at this point. I can leave student feedback, decide whether something gets 0 points. I can award full credit and just move on rather than having to type out 4 here. I can mark needs work, so I could actually give this a 3 and then say, let's try this with a while loop. And I can say this needs work. And that will go back to the student. They will see that this has been marked pink, something that needs to be reviewed, and they can continue to answer from there. This doesn't, however, answer that student question. So I'm under here, more, and then conversation, and I can say, student, this is a, got ahead of myself, while loop exercise. Try using a loop to answer multiple worlds. And I can send that to the student. Just like the comment that I left, this will go to the student for them to take a look at. Another thing at my disposal as a teacher is the solution, obviously. So if I don't know the answer, you can pull up the solution, and that's going to walk you through what the answer is and why that is the answer. It gives you common pitfalls that students might be experiencing, and so on. Another great teacher tool under more here is this history. It's going to show you each time that a student has run this activity. So we can click back here. Looks like they started with nothing. That checks out. They tried to run it with 2 moves. Okay, they're kind of progressing along. Looks like they really never got on the right track, right? We don't see any while loops that they may have gotten off track with. So if I think it's a while loop, but I'm not sure, you can actually try it out right in the student code. So we could say while ball is present, move. This isn't going to affect the student code, and students aren't going to know that you're testing out on their account or anything. Oh, doesn't look like I typed that out correctly. So let's add another parenthesis and try again. Okay, fun. Still have error messages. But we can see here that you can try student code out and it's not going to affect the student code. When students come back to this page, they're still going to see the last thing that they ran. So that's another thing that you have access to on kind of the student editor. You can grade directly from the student editor. You can review conversations. You can review their history, check out the solution, all from that editor. And that's under the review tab. The other tab that we have is Gradebook. So that's next to review. Review was where we saw the help tab and where we saw grading. So I'll pull that up again just so that we can reference. Right, we have the help tab and grades. So we can grade student work. We could just give full credit if that's something maybe that we did virtually together. We could just give full credit. We can also open Fast Grade from here, which is a great grading tool that pro teachers have access to. And I will show that here momentarily via the Gradebook. So we're in the Gradebook. There's a few different things that you can do. Under module, we're currently only looking at one module. We're looking at while loops, but we could look at all modules. We could look at a different module if we wanted, but let's stay looking at while loops. Another thing that I can do is change the point totals. So we can see here, Mr. Meek currently has a 4 out of 4. I actually want this to be worth 10 points. So I've changed the point totals there, and you can see everybody's scores adjusted appropriately. Put balls away, the debugging challenge, we actually aren't gonna do. You know, maybe we did it in class, maybe I'm saving debugging for a later period, maybe we spent a bunch of time earlier in the month already doing debugging. So I'm just gonna X and remove that from the gradebook. It says, are you really sure you want to remove this from the gradebook? And we can click yes. One thing to note is that's removing it from the gradebook. It's not removing it from the student workflow. Removing things from the student workflow is something Ryan touched on under assignments, right? Where you click the ellipses button and then click delete. That's how you remove something from the workflow. Removing something from the gradebook is really removing something from your workflow, not from students. They're never gonna know what's in the gradebook and what's not. So that can all be done under edit settings. Your other option is to configure the gradebook. So if we're not interested in showing videos, again, I still want students to do them. I still want students to, you know, take that and think they're earning credit, things like that. But I'm really only interested in seeing the exercises in my gradebook. So this is more or less like filtering in Excel, right? So now we just see the exercises in the gradebook. Makes it a lot easier to read and a lot easier for me to get work done. So we looked at grading from the review tab. We can fast grade or grade mode, but let's actually, I just want to grade everybody's submissions for Follow the Yellow Ball Road. So I'm going to click on this, open that tab up. We can see we have a few different options here. I can decide that Mr. Meek's work is actually not done. I'm gonna say, hey, you gotta keep working on this. You know, maybe I left him a comment that I remember he needs to continue to work on. And I can change his score here. Maybe I just want him to see that I gave him an 11 out of 10, that he did a really good job. So we can change our score there. We can change the status. We can obviously do that in bulk as well by selecting multiple students here. And if we click fast grade, regardless of status, regardless of points, regardless of submission, regardless of anything, it's gonna pull up everybody's work. So we can go ahead and pull up everyone's work. Looks like the first person to submit was Mr. Meek. We see his solution here in the middle. On the right, we see the CodeHS solution. It matches, right? It looks great. It looks like while ball is present, move. I think that's gonna solve it. You know, if I'm not sure, I could open it up in the editor. But again, I'm pretty confident that this student did well. So I'm just gonna say, great job. Finalize it, move it on. So if I find myself typing the same thing over and over, I could use a canned response. So I could add a canned response. You know, maybe I'm telling a whole bunch of people, great job. So I can add that response and then add that in. And rather than having to type things out all the time, you probably don't need a great job canned answer, but maybe you need a please refer to the docs, or we just watched a video on blank. Isn't that what this exercise is about? Things like that. However, student here, it looks like has not submitted for this activity. So I want to go ahead and take a look at this student's code. So using this C in code editor button, I'm going to open up student's code. We can see this takes us back to that editor. I can, again, make suggestions, leave comments via more conversation or via the grade tab. I can, you know, give point totals here, whatever you as the teacher may need to do. So again, that's under Gradebook. Where do we go? Gradebook, and I selected a single lesson to grade, and it's gonna show each student's grade. Once I've graded everything, I'm gonna say, great job, but try again. I'm gonna give them a 6, and I'm gonna say this needs work. And that's gonna go back to the student. They're gonna know that they need to continue to work on that. And if I had a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, student, their work would show up here as well, regardless of submission status. Using filtering and ordering, I can change that to only show maybe people that are reviewed or finalized or submitted after review. So you can filter on what you're looking for. I can filter and pull up multiple assignments. I also want to pull up the Carol digging exercise. So that's gonna pull up that exercise as well. Doesn't look like anybody has completed this, but again, pulls up that work for me. So we have talked through what the student editor page looks like, what the teacher editor page from review, how you can review and grade, and from Gradebook, how you can review and grade student work. So we'll take a moment to answer any questions we might have.
Awesome, thanks, Lucas. There was one question about toggling between like a teacher and student view. So I just wanted to share, there is a way to do that, to kind of see it from the student side. You're not logging in as one of your students, but you can see the exercises as a student would see them. And I just want to show you how you can do that. So here we go. All right, and you can see my screen, I'm assuming. Let's hope so. So this is the assignments page here. So up here at the top, there's a banner. So you're in the teacher assignment view. So if you click to the switch to student view, that then toggles to the student view of the same thing. So this is like the custom, or this is what students will actually see when they log in to see their course. And so you can see how I've edited things, and I've changed settings, so only this is what's visible right now, which is not terribly helpful, but it's a way to preview what students will see, when you change, like, is something assigned, or due dates, or, access controls. And so like this would show locks if I actually lock this down, this particular lesson. And then you can always toggle back to the teacher view to do it, to go back to editing your full course. I will say also that in the student view, you can work through the course yourself. So that's a great place if you ever want to live like demo going through an exercise. You can switch to your student view and then actually open up a particular activity, and you'll have a blank editor for yourself. This is like your student corner for your course that you can work through it to demo with students. If you ever want to go through, for example, one of the examples together, you're going to do that together on a video call, as a class. This would be the kind of path to do that. Then the other thing, there was just a question about progress tracking, kind of that final tab. So Lucas showed you the gradebook. You can get pretty much everything you need from the gradebook, but I just wanted to show you, because we have a progress tracking dashboard, what that looks like for your classes. So it's very similar, your roster, here are all the activities for your module, and it's the same color coding that you saw in the gradebook. It just doesn't have the grades. So it's maybe a little simpler way to view where students are. And again, you can click on the individual activities. One unique progress view would be the time tracking. So this is the cybersecurity activities that I just added, so none of the students have done. But here are all the Carol activities. So this is kind of a unique way to just get a sense of, as a class on a whole, how students are doing. So it might help you identify places to have conversations with students. So for example, let's say for the Pyramid of Carroll, all the students were completing it in like 4 or 5 minutes, but Emma only completed it, only took 31 seconds to complete it. That might be something you click on to check her code specifically, because maybe she just put in something that passed the auto graders but didn't actually solve the problem. So that might be a place to concentrate, your conversations with students, or just a way to kind of spot check how students are doing.
Yeah, so that's a great place to look at that history, to maybe go to a conversation and leave a comment like, hey, how, this went really well, things like that. So all potential cases there.
Yeah, so I could just...
Looks like in this case, she just did this very fast.
Yeah, well, so I can see, I think it's interesting, this, as Lucas showed, the history, the snapshots of all the coding, she just has one snapshot and has 20 lines of code. So that to me might suggest that maybe she actually copied and pasted this from somewhere. Maybe a student shared their solution with them and they just copied and pasted. So this is, cheating. It's the worst part of the teacher's job, but students will do it. And so I think the history tab is a great way to, again, look into things, to maybe have that conversation with a student, and maybe you check in with Emma and say, hey Emma, can you tell me how you approached this exercise? Or you could create your own unique one, create an original Carroll exercise and assign it as a kind of a assessment to see if, did they actually learn the content or was it just copied and pasted? But I think because she completed in 30 seconds and it's just one snapshot, that would be a red flag for me.
Yeah, copy and paste prevention is actually something via access controls. Ryan, there was a question about particular course versus multiple, one section versus multiple sections. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you wanted to jump into course settings and show how you can make decisions for all sections versus one section.
Yeah,
so maybe let's take a look at that copy paste prevention, and you can show what it looks like if you have multiple sections.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the way the structure is set up, again, so you can have, when you create your sections, once you create one section and one course, you can create a second section and align it to the same course. You'll see that in the section creation windows. And so what that means is that you can edit the settings for both of these sections and the content in the same place instead of having to do everything, repeated over and over again. So I will go to, in the course settings, let's go to the copy and paste prevention. I believe this is a way we can do that. Yep. So here is, I'm in the, under the virtual course. So I can see, here's my course name, here are all my modules. So right now I only have one section. So actually, let me go to my other course here, independent study. So I have multiple sections here. So if let's say for a particular quiz, so end of unit quiz for the JavaScript graphics. So let's say I don't, well, that's a quiz, so they wouldn't copy and paste. Let's take a final exercise. Let's say the snowman. I want to make sure that they are typing out solutions. So I might turn on copy and paste prevention for all my sections. So this is under the all sections. So students can't actually copy and paste code into there. Or, if it was just one section that was abusing the copy and paste, I could adjust it and just turn on one section's prevention of copy and paste. You also have the ability to really drill down and turn it on for a single student or a group of students. And that's something that if you have questions on that, it's a little more advanced, but if one student in particular has been copying and you don't want to punish the whole class, you could, for that one student, prevent copying and paste, just for that student. But so yeah, so this is the benefit of aligning multiple sections with one course. I could change the settings for all sections at once if I wanted to, without having to individually do that for every section.
Awesome. And then that's all our questions right now, Ryan. But if you,
cool. I'll give you back.
Thank you. We will finish out here talking about some additional resources. So we've talked about the review tab where you can go to view student work, student questions, the gradebook where you can kind of obviously grade. Course settings is where you can go to look at different access controls, due dates. Grading settings is something that we haven't touched on yet, but that is whether the CodeHS auto grader is doing the grading, or if you as the teacher would like to do the grading. We've seen by clicking on an individual lesson that you can do the grading regardless. So you can still grade things even after they've passed the auto grader and received credit. You still have access to grade that information. Block text settings is whether they actually have to physically type everything out or they can drag and drop blocks. Is assigned, that's unassigning and assigning things, so a little bit less severe than actually deleting something. Copy paste we just talked about, and shuffle quiz questions is what it sounds like. We've talked about progress, the assignments, the roster, etc. But let's take a look at some of our additional resources here under Toolbox. Under Toolbox, we can see the glossary. So, any vocabulary word that students may have covered, things like that. The solution reference is again, exactly what it sounds like, something that you as the teacher have access to, but not students, to be able to see the solutions for any given activity. And again, see common pitfalls, see potential duplicate solutions, anything like that. Handouts, again, additional questions, free response, multiple choice, things like that that you could give students. Problem guides and lesson plans. Let's take a look at a lesson plan. This is kind of the end-all be-all of a CodeHS resource. So we can see each lesson plan is going to have an objective. So these are, a few students will be able to create for loops to repeat code a fixed number of times. Students will be able to explain when a for loop will be a useful tool. So these are things that you could do if you are using a virtual classroom, if you are using Zoom or Google Hangout, or even just creating Loom videos that you're sending to students. So these are more of those classroom tools, right? Objectives. Again, you see your solution references, your problem guides, your vocabulary. Here's your handouts, both student and teacher versions. Any textbook resource that we use to create the lesson. Here's some planning notes, so things you need to do before preparing for this lesson, teaching and learning strategies, and prior knowledge. If there's really pertinent discussion questions, those are always going to be available in the lesson plan. So again, that's one of those more classroom-oriented things, but something that you could certainly be using in a virtual classroom as well. Another great tool, especially when you get some students that are really interested. You have some students that are completing all the work for the day or the week. There's just additional practice problems here. These are ungraded, unassigned, always available to students. You can see we have 4 different languages here: Java, JavaScript, Python, and C++. The students are going to have many of the same resources available to them, right? We see that it takes us to the editor. We can write our code, run code, check the test cases, visit the docs, and etc. So that's another tool for them. Those discussion questions, the handouts, the things that you'll see in the lesson plan can really be useful when you're still hoping to, kind of maintain some sort of a classroom semblance. And finally, something else that's available to teachers is in the right-hand corner. We can see this Intercom link. This is, again, the way that you can contact a CodeHS representative, and we can begin to answer questions. So again, whether that's where did the gradebook go, or how do I change course settings? Can you help me decide good code to show students, different things like that. So many of us have been teachers in the past, and we've obviously utilized CodeHS in a variety of ways to to teach in a classroom, both virtually and in person. So please don't hesitate to reach out with questions you might have. We know this is kind of an unprecedented time, and we want to be as available as we can to answer questions and make sure that you feel comfortable utilizing the resource. So please don't hesitate to reach out to ask any questions that you may have.